Hi, welcome everyone. I'm Juliette Wolf-Robin, National Executive Director of American Photographic Artists. APA is a not-for-profit trade association of professional photographers who work mostly in advertising and editorial industries. Our association is run by photographers for photographers. It's a volunteer organization, and our mission is really to help photographers succeed. We do this by advocating on behalf of photographers, by providing tools and information that will help them run a more profitable business. We help them to connect with people who can hire them, and we help them connect with other industry professionals who can be supportive of them in the industry, such as what we're doing with today's conversation. Community is key to everyone's success. So the APA Scope series was developed to focus on diversity and inclusion in our industry. And today's focus is to look at groups that were created specifically to help women photographers. I asked Traci Terrick to moderate. She spent 20 years creating visual content, and her photo agency, Poppy Creative, represents some of the top commercial photographers, yet she still found time to launch Focus on Women, to elevate and empower female identifying professionals in the commercial industry. She'll be speaking about her experience and be in discussions with Keren Sachs, founder of The Luupe, and Polly Irungu, who last year launched Black Women Photographers. I'm handing them the platform, and at the end, I'll be back for the Q&A. So be sure to put your questions in the Q&A area, and we will talk with everyone then. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Traci.
Great. Thanks. I'm Traci Terrick, the founder of Poppy Creative Agency, as well as Focus on Women, like Juliette mentioned. I'm here with two amazing ladies, Keren Sachs from The Luupe and Polly Irungu from Black Women Photographers. Thanks everyone for joining us. And we're gonna start a little bit background on The Luupe. The Luupe is a platform that connects brands with diverse photographers to create custom, high quality visual content. Keren, the founder and CEO, has dedicated her career championing artists and getting the right eyes on their work. She has served as an advisor to companies around the world with a focus on content licensing, business development, and international growth. Previously, she was the director of content development for Shutterstock, where she led the acquisition and curatorial direction for Offset, and has also worked for National Geographic, The Wall Street Journal, Martha Stewart Living, Williams-Sonoma, and many more. Keren regularly speaks on diversity and authenticity in front of and behind the lens, and has appeared on CBS and MSNBC. Polly is the founder of Black Women Photographers, a global community and directory of Black women and non-binary photographers. She's also a digital content editor at New York's Public Radio, where she's responsible for managing social media for WNYC and PRX's The Takeaway, a national NPR show with over 2 million listeners. Pitching news stories and features for The Takeaway and her podcast is ranked the 4th most downloaded, amongst others. As a photographer, Polly's work has been published in numerous publications, including Global Citizen, NPR, BBC News, The Luupe, Emmy Feeder, Refinery 29, The Washington Post, BuzzFeed, and many others. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited to meet both of you. We obviously kind of, are in the same world, in the same arena of what we do with our free time, so to speak. So I want to start, and we can start with whoever wants to go first. I just want each of you to tell a little bit about your organization and what the process is to become part of that organization, if someone is interested. Can you walk us through?
Polly, do you want to go first?
Sure, since I'm the newest one on the block. Thanks for the kind introduction, and thank you for having me. So I started Black Women Photographers last year, as you mentioned, during this pandemic. In June, I kicked it off with the COVID-19 Relief Fund, able to fundraise over $14,000 USD to help photographers in the States and internationally, and provide them with a small relief fund. And then the following month is when I launched the global database in July, my birthday. And Really, the process is pretty simple. I mean, people just email or sometimes they just DM whichever platform they discover BWP, but they just send an email and just ask and provide background about themselves and their journey. I send them a quick form that basically just goes over, who they are, a link to their work, just any background information that they care to share and what they would want to share with editors. And also just like community-based questions like, why would you want to join this community? How can this community help you? And how can you help this community kind of thing? And then after that, I accept pretty much any and all photographers who want to be a part of it that identify as a Black woman or a non-binary photographer. And I get them up on the directory. And so it's pretty a quick process.
And how many are on the directory currently?
Currently over 600. So it's nice to see the growth just happen, pretty quickly and organically through social media and different platforms such as this one.
That's awesome. That's great. Yeah. Keren, you want to tell us a little bit more about The Luupe and what the platform's like?
Sure. We are a platform connecting women and non-binary photographers with brands to create content around the world. And we're also a community, and we look to help and empower the photographers in our community. So to become a member of The Luupe, you can come to our website, theluupe.com, and you can apply to be a member. You tell us a little bit about yourself, and you submit a link to your website, to your Instagram, whatever you want us to view. We review that. And we do not accept every photographer who applies into The Luupe. And there's a specific reason, and that's because we're connecting the photographers with the brands, and we want to make sure that any job that a photographer takes, that they have the experience, the knowledge, and the ability to take on that work to do a wonderful job for that brand. So we're pretty selective in the photographers that we bring on. We're at 450 photographers now. We've been doing this for about 2 years. We're looking for lighting, composition, past work, past experience. And we know that every photographer around the world doesn't always have the same opportunities as some of the photographers in New York or London or LA. So we're cognizant of that when we're looking at your work. And what we're really looking at is the technical capabilities that you have on top of your experience. So all of that matters. And then we welcome you into The Luupe and you're on the platform.
And can you tell us a little bit about the types of brands that you're connecting these ladies with?
Yeah, sure. All of the women on our platform have the opportunity through The Luupe to work with brands like Facebook or Peloton or a number of other large enterprises who come to The Luupe for content. And they come to us because of our global representation, because of the diversity, and because they want to work with women photographers. So there's an opportunity to work with all different types of brands. We also work with some smaller companies. We're shooting for a startup right now. It really depends. It's, every job isn't the same, but it's a wide variety of brands who are coming to The Luupe.
And can the artists be represented already? Are they all individual photographers, or how does that work?
Yeah, it just depends. Photographers in certain cities might have agents, might have reps. Photographers in other places probably don't. It depends on where that photographer is. We welcome everyone to apply. We're not competing with the reps. That's not our goal at all. We want to just help women find more jobs, find more work. It really depends on their relationship with their rep. So a photographer might say, I can't join. My rep wants to take a cut of everything and it just doesn't make sense. Or, what we say back to that photographer is we're also a community. And so we'd hate for you to miss out on the community opportunities and the different things we do because of that. But it's really not something that we get involved in. It's up to the photographer. And we want the photographer to make that choice. And if they want to be a member of this community, we want them to have that opportunity. So, whatever they decide.
Cool. I think that was a question I know some people have. So I thought I would just ask that right off the bat. So now that you've been, we'll stay with Keren. Now that you've been there for 2 years, what are some of the challenges that you hear most often from female professionals?
Yeah, so Not just over the last 2 years that we've been building the loop, but just throughout my career, I've heard from women about different issues that have come up from other people on set thinking that they're an assistant, to being called sweetie or angel on set. Somebody was just saying that last week in a talk that we did for our community. So I think it's often a problem that women photographers run into is not being taken seriously, not being thought of as the photographer on set. I think a lot of people have a connotation of what a photographer looks like, and a photographer does not always look like a man. A photographer can come in all different shapes and sizes and genders and sex. So it just is part of what we're trying to do is educate that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of women photographers around the world who are qualified, who have the capabilities, and should be given or afforded the opportunities to create content for all different types of brands. So, you know, it runs the gamut. Things that women photographers are told. I'm sure both of you have heard a lot of this from photographers who you work with, or probably when you're shooting. It's just something that happens and something that we want to fight against.
Yeah. Polly, for you, was that one of the main reasons for doing what you did to start the platform? Was your own experience on set?
I mean, Keren brings up a lot of great points. Not necessarily my own experience. I mean, for me, it's even just being able to get to the set, being able to, have that opportunity, that access to even be on a set is really the issue for myself as a Black woman, and for other Black women photographers that have, reached out and, talked to me about their experience. Because if we're afforded that opportunity, that's one thing. And then two, once we get there and have that opportunity, then it's usually microaggressions, racist, just different things like that. And so for me, I mean, for my own experience, really was the lack of, being able to find other Black photographers or Black women photographers when I was starting my journey was really one of the main reasons why I launched it. I went to a PWI. So for those who don't know what that is, it's a predominantly white university. I went to the University of Oregon. And so for me, that, the lack of community, the lack of, just finding other photographers who look like me was really one of the motivations, because it can be very discouraging. It's hard to navigate two, white male dominated industries, one photojournalism, and the other just being journalism itself and media itself. And so for me, that's really what was one of the reasons, the driving forces. I was able to find some community within NEBJ, which is Association for Black Journalists, which helped, give me that push that I needed, that affirmation that I could actually be in the field of journalism. But when I was starting out as a photographer, I mean, I barely was contacted for assignments. I applied for every photo internship you can think of, did not get a single call back, no interview. And so it can be very defeating, right? And so, for people like, who often get rejections, you either keep going or you just stay down, right? And so for me, I had to just keep going and learn the non-traditional route is just teaching yourself, like most photographers have done within this community. And just from what I hear, it's a lot of photographers are self-taught. And, by doing so, you miss out on, the access that you may get from an internship, the opportunities you may get right off the bat, that network. And so it is harder to not be on an even playing field. And so for me, just hearing from the different experiences from the photographers in the community who also shared, even if they were based here or elsewhere. I mean, for the folks who are based elsewhere, it's more so if, photographers parachuting in and they're not being considered. So they're, mainly Western outlets not hiring local photographers was the issue for those who are based internationally. But for the folks who are based here, they shared similar sentiments. It was hard to even just get hired in the first place. And so for me, that was really just the driving force of doing this, is to help those photographers get seen and then get hired, but also make sure that they have that, the educational background, or become what people dub as, industry standard or just ready for the industry in a sense, because if you don't get access to those hiring opportunities, how can you even be hired in the first place, right? But if you don't know what it takes to be hired, you know, you may not know just the common language within contracts. You may not know what photo editors at the New York Times or wherever else are looking for. If you don't know, you don't know, right? And so for me, it's just all the stuff that I learned was either the hard way or just now through setting up these educational webinars and trainings and events that I've been doing for the community. So the reason why I know the stuff I know now, because again, I didn't go to a school for it. I didn't have, you know, mentors at that time. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, I mean, I feel like the same thing was how Focus on Women was started. Was I just heard from so many women at different events that I went to where there were a few women in the room, where it was like, oh, you're gonna have a happy hour for women? Oh my God, can I be invited? You know, I think we're all seeking community and resources, and you know, especially in the photography field, so many people are self-taught or do go to school, but they don't even learn some of those things when they leave school, like how to do a business plan or how to charge, how to make an invoice, you know, like all of that bookkeeping stuff that isn't taught in photography school. So it's great to, you know, see that there are people out there who saw the need and then, you know, tried to fill that niche because they needed it themselves. I love that. Can you each go into a little bit more? Keren, will you tell us a little bit more about what you do for the community in terms of networking events and workshops and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So our focus right now has really been on getting everyone to work. And so we're slightly different in the sense that we are building out a platform. We're a startup, we're a tech company. We're really focused on connecting these photographers and giving them the tools that they need to get the work that they want to get and want to achieve. That said, we also have an active Slack community where we're helping everyone. We give advice and feedback, and everyone jumps in and gives advice to one another, which we love seeing. And then we do monthly Zoom calls in the future. Post-COVID, we have a lot of other things planned to continue to help the community, but our focus is slightly different in the sense that we're not focused on doing regular events in New York. Our community is all over the world, so we do a lot online and really try to connect with our community that way.
Okay, cool. And Polly, will you go into a little bit about the different programs you guys are working on?
Yeah, similar to Keren, we just wrapped up this virtual free webinar series with the Everyday Projects based on the essentials of photojournalism. As a 5-week free classes with some notable folks that you all probably know in this call and who will be watching later. You know, I think the first week was, what was the first week? Man, it was, there was a class on pitching from a photographer's perspective and then an editor's perspective. There was grant funding, how to get support for your projects and just the basics of like grant writing. There was a class from Yagazi, who's a Nigerian-based a Nigerian photojournalist, and she spoke on just, you know, being your own manager as a photographer, how you don't necessarily need a rep or whatever to be successful, and just what you need to know with contracts and language and licensing and usage and things like that. And she shared examples from her own contracts that she's received, just to break it down in the most practical way. And so that literally just ended last week. But we've been doing conversations ever since the start, virtually, obviously, on Zoom, and that's been helpful because we have over 12 time zones in the group. So we need that virtual setting. Yeah. And so, I mean, the classes have varied from, again, like pitching to tackling quote unquote imposter syndrome to business side of photography. We've done a few how-to series with the photo directors and photo team at Bloomberg. We've again partnered with different organizations to host great, you know, practical educational talks. And then we also did this series with Adobe Lightroom that's ongoing of just speaking with notable Black photographers and filmmakers in the industry, hear from their experience, how they got their start. Because you always see photographers when they're at the top. It's like, okay, where did they start their journey, right? How did they put in those 10,000 hours to get to where they are? And that was very, inspiring, but also just, again, practical advice from these photographers who are one point where you are at in your journey. And then just some other talks and events that not necessarily with, again, members of this community, but I just felt that it would be necessary to hear from them because of who they are in the industry. So a conversation with Pete Souza was one of the highlights, and then Lucidon, and others in the industry that, serve a different purpose. And so those were just some of the events. Right now, we just also doing, again, different trainings. We recently did a training for safety, just like HEFAT, because I never knew that HEFAT training was a thing, safety training, until last year. And so set that up, looking forward to setting up another one, and just did 2 sets of trainings for different softwares, the most recent one with Capture One, and they have graciously offered licenses to the community. And so, again, all of our events have been virtual, obviously because of this pandemic, but also just because of how global our community is. And moving forward, there will most likely be a mix of virtual and in-person. We've recently started doing some BWB meetups where photographers in their local respective communities have done just a cool gathering outside and meet other Black women, non-binary photographers. And so that's been exciting to witness. There's a few more coming up at the end of this month.
I love seeing those pictures on your stories, Polly. It's so fun to see the excitement for everyone getting together.
Really,
it's really cool.
I know. I definitely have FOMO. Like at the end of this month, some folks in Abuja, Nigeria, and then some folks in LA and Dallas and DC have all planned their meetups. And so
Great.
one day I'll be able to travel to all these places and meet them all. But for now, it's just exciting, again, like you to
Yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. So Keren, can we go back a little bit to how is it because you do work with the brand, so you're getting to see some of that other side. Like, have you seen a shift where they are looking for women in particular, and how does that feel, or what are those changes, and how far has it really come for us?
I don't know that I can say how far it's come, but I can say that there's definitely a huge change happening, and you can feel it. And I think a lot of it, I attribute to Polly. She's made such incredible headway in building Black women photographers, and more brands are realizing that the whole idea of they don't know where to find Black women photographers is kind of just so absurd. And Polly's putting it out there for everyone to see where they are, which is amazing. But we're getting requests for more diverse photographers, which is wonderful, because the Luupe is quite diverse, and we want to make sure that it is not just the white photographers who are getting work, that it's photographers of every race and all over the world who are getting the work. So that's really important to us. We're hearing from brands that they have mandates that they need to hire diverse photographers, which is really incredible. You weren't hearing that 2 or 3 years ago. Nobody really cared. They weren't even thinking about it. They were just getting whoever they could, or whoever they knew, or whoever the creative director, art director, photo editor had a relationship with. And that's why those people keep getting the work over and over again. And it's really hard for photographers to break in. So we are definitely seeing that change, where brands are coming to us. They're coming to us because we are a community of women photographers, because we are diverse. That's important to them now. And we're seeing that change. And the reason we should talk about, there's a couple of reasons why that's important. One being, when more diverse people are taking the photos, they're going to resonate with a more diverse audience. I mean, we should acknowledge that. It's of course about getting more women behind the camera and getting them work, but it's also about representation and connecting with an audience. And I think brands to answer the question, the brands are realizing how important that is, that they need diverse representation in their imagery, behind the camera, in front of the camera, to connect with their audiences. And so that's important to us when we are pulling photographers for the jobs that we're working on, for the projects we're working on. It's really important to us that it's a diverse group and that the imagery that we're returning back to the customer, back to the brands, is diverse.
Yeah. I think that's a good point, is that it's it's having those people be behind the lens that's changing the vision as well as the other side too. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And what do you guys, how are you feeling? I feel like there's so many different organizations that have started in the last couple of years around both diversity and women and non-binary. And do you feel like there's power in those numbers, that's helping, and that we should all be, kind of holding hands and working together and lifting each other up just helps the whole situation? Or do we feel like there will be an oversaturation at some point? Polly, you want to see?
Yeah, I'll go after Polly.
I mean, I would hope that one day we feel that there's an oversaturation of women photographers being hired. I mean, right now that's not the case, because that's why we're here right now.
Right.
So for me, I think the more the merrier. I think we all serve a different purpose, and we see where we can complement each other as well. And so for me, I mean, I don't mind it, obviously, because I'm one of the new folks, right, on the block. And, again, like, we all do different things, but we also have things where we do the same things, and that's where we can complement each other and work together. And so, yeah, I mean, right now there is no oversaturation of women or non-binary photographers being hired. So until there is, maybe we could rethink that. But right now, I think we're okay.
Yeah, the thought wouldn't even dawn on me, to be honest, because I think that all of the different communities, platforms out there are doing something different and unique. And I think that is what's important, is that we're bringing something different to the table, but at the same time helping underrepresented creators get work or build community, or in Polly's case, learn. I mean, the different panels that you're setting up are just incredible. And that is so important. And I think there's crossover, right? Like, Polly is a member of The Luupe. And other members of Black women photographers are also in The Luupe. So there's a ton of crossover. I mean, when you think about Women Photograph helping editorial photographers get their name out there, we are specifically focused on commercial photographers, although just recently we've been taking on more editorial photographers. I think there's room for everyone, and we're all doing something different, right? We're concentrated on building a platform that allows the brands and the photographers to connect online, right? And there's a community aspect to it, but we're really focused on the technology that we're building to help women do their jobs. And Polly has a different focus. So to me, it's not even a question of too many. We're all out there trying to help and to change the world of photography, which needs a huge change and a huge overhaul.
Right. Do you want to share with the group who are some of those other organizations that you're noticing and watching that you love right now?
Yeah, go for it, Polly.
Sorry. I mean, for me, like you mentioned Women Photograph. For me, that was like the inspiration for me. And that whole team has been super supportive from the start. I mentioned earlier the Everyday Projects. And again, that whole team and all the work they do and the different like chapters they have like, Everyday Africa and Everyday Pakistan and Everyday Iran. So that team has been incredible as well for the start, and that's who we recently collaborated with for the webinar series. Authority Collective is one of my other favorite communities, obviously also Diversified Photo as well. They have been one of the folks who has also been trailblazing the way in this industry. yeah, and obviously the Luupe as well. So I think those are the folks who come to mind right away. But I'm probably as well definitely leaving folks out. So yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. I think, photography, and I've said this before, and if there's anybody on this call who's in the Luupe, they've probably heard me say this, but I think photography has a history of being a competitive field. Like there was always this thought that there's not enough work for everyone. So photographers were secretive and held things back and didn't share and didn't help and didn't mentor the next generation of photographers. And that's not great, right? Like we want to break that down. We want to say that it doesn't have to be so competitive, that you can connect with others, you can be supportive of others. You don't have to be so quiet and hush hush about your jobs. I think it's beautiful when a photographer in the Luupe will say, I have a job, but I can't do it. An opportunity has come up. Is there someone else who can take this on? Is there someone else who can do this shoot? That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Like, let's share it and not be afraid that that photographer is now going to steal your client, right? And so if we're trying to break down the walls of competition, then it only makes sense that any platform, any community that is helping women photographers is supported and helped and encouraged and empowered the same way we would with photographers. I mean, it's a great thing. And I think the more that are out there, the more that are working for change, the better. And Polly's named a number of great ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to shout out one more that's not necessarily a community in this traditional sense that we're speaking of, but Carmen Chan and the two other photographers that started F gatekeeping, literally for the reason why you just said it, Keren, for like not to gatekeep this information, to share our knowledge. And so just wanted to shout out them as well.
Yeah. I think that's super important. And I love watching all of that happen and seeing all of these different people just kind of stand up and be open-minded and share their information. I think there is plenty of work to go around. I think as a rep, you sort of, you have your own little bubble that you live in with your artists. And that's something I've always said to my artists is there's plenty of work to go around. There's no reason to be competing amongst your own peers all the time.
Yeah. Which kind of goes back to your initial question to me about do photographers in the Luupe also have reps? To me and to my team, there is so much work out there, and a lot of the projects we're getting are not projects that necessarily come through a rep. And I'm not a rep, but I would hope that reps just as well want to get their photographers as much work or have their photographers working all the time. And I think through the pandemic, that was one thing that we really focused on, is making sure that photographers had work and could continue to work. We had a message from one of our photographers recently that a year ago at this time, she was concerned about how she was going to put food on the table to feed her family. And we were helping her get work, and she was able to keep going in photography. And so I think there's a different way of looking at things today. So for reps, breaking down the thought of competition, for photographers, breaking down the thought of competition, and then coming to the platforms that we're all out there with a common goal, which is to help more women get work.
Yeah, for sure. So we talked a little bit about that the shift has definitely started, and we've started to see it, and we've seen art buyers asking for it. And we're seeing it, I think, through the imagery that's being put out there for sure, especially in the last year, more than anything, right? What about have we also, would we all agree? I think this is a case in point, is that it's also shifted how we see women and how we portray women in photography and advertising, and having a woman behind the camera has helped elevate that and change that lens as well. Would you both agree?
Yeah, I think it's complicated and nuanced, and there's a lot of layers to the question. I don't think it's just about, I think it's important, obviously, and something I'm working and fighting for every single day, all day long, is to get women behind the camera, because I do believe that the representation of women therefore changes. I like to look at images and guess if a man or woman shot it, because I think sometimes with like overly sexualized images, you kind of think, oh, a woman didn't take this image. But I think it's also more complicated in the sense that art directors are also behind that image, and brands are behind that image, and they have a creative vision of what they want that image to be if it was shot for a brand. So it's not just about the photographer, but yes, I do think that we are seeing in imagery, women take on more roles than just the homemaker, or, you know, just taking care of the children, or in overly sexualized images, right? You're seeing more nuanced women in front of you, and that will resonate with me as a consumer much more. So again, why all of this is just so important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you've seen brands, like, look at all some of those new brands that are coming out that have completely shifted. You know, they're being more socially conscious. They're being really vocal about behind the scenes, you know, like who we hire, who's working here,
Yeah.
so that's a big shift as well.
Yeah.
Polly, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I think Keren made a very good point with that.
Let's talk then about what's next for both of your organizations as we grow. What is the, you know, we're all coming out of COVID and hopefully back at work. What do you see that's different, that's moving forward, and what is, you know, the next year look for both of you guys with your programs?
Well, I mean, July next month. I mean, I don't know about the whole year. I mean, so I could tell you about next month, because obviously with the pandemic, I've just I've been more cautious of how far in advance I plan for things, because you just never know. And so also just because of the capacity of what I can just manage in my bandwidth, and balancing this with a full-time job and then my other obligations. And so for me next, I only know like the few weeks of planned. And so July marks the first anniversary of Black Women Photographers. So I'm very excited about that. And so right now I'm just, again, pretty much doing the same thing, and just keep getting the word out, keep growing the community, keep, you know, connecting photographers. Recently just actually wrapped up a bunch of portfolio review sessions. It's one of just like the main priorities I have for this community, because a lot of the photographers have never had their portfolio critiqued outside of friends or family. And we all know why it's important to have more than friends and family critique your portfolio. And so I've been offering free portfolios pretty much since the launch of the community, with different, you know, photo editors at the Times, or, you know, local ones like the Star Tribune, or again, national ones like NPR and Washington Post or Guardian. All of them have, you know, and more have been fortunate enough to, you know, give us their time and, you know, review portfolios. And so just wrapped up the spring, in a sense, sessions. And so looking forward to do some summer sessions starting next month. And maybe do a few other cool things to celebrate the 1-year anniversary. Still, again, wrapping things up, like, you know, I'm still planning, so I have nothing major to announce yet, but please do stay tuned. You know, on the site, blackwomenphotographers.com, you can subscribe to the newsletter, because there will be cool announcements happening. Just can't say so much more yet as I finalize a few things. And we will be doing a print sale to celebrate the 1-year anniversary, print sale and fundraiser. So 50% will go to the artists who, you know, donate a print, and the other 50% would go to helping Black women photographers grow, and with operational costs. And so please stay tuned for that, because that'd be a great opportunity to purchase prints. But a lot of photographers already have print shops up on their store, so you don't have to wait till next month to support. You can please start supporting the artists now. But yeah, I think that's a few things from me.
That's a lot, Polly.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Hearing Polly say that makes me realize I didn't mention that we do portfolio reviews for every member of our community as well. And we do these monthly Zoom calls. We did one on how to break into editorial photography. We just did a call on making the transition into video. So we'll continue our monthly Zoom calls and bring in more interesting people to talk to our community and help them grow and empower them. we're really focused on building out the tech and building out more features to help bring more of this process online. We'll continue to grow our community and grow our team. We have a lot more in store, not much that I can share right now, but I'm just excited to really be focused on getting more work, focused on more work for our photographers, connecting with more brands, getting the name out there more, so more people know who we are, what we do, and how we can help their brands get really incredible content shot by women photographers simultaneously around the world. So that's our focus. That's what we'll continue to double down on over the next year, and just so grateful that there's hopefully an end in sight to all of this. It seems like there's an end in sight, and we can all leave our homes. My team all works remotely. We're a global team, and you know, I'd like to see people again. I'd like to see my team and work in the same office with them one day. So those are the things that we're focused on.
Yeah. Keren, can I ask, have you seen an uptick in requests for work in the last couple months?
Yeah, I mean, I would say this year, absolutely. It's a lot of it has to do with our outreach and you know, building brand awareness, but yeah, we're excited about the brands who are coming to us and wanting to work with the community. It's been great. And even during the pandemic, what was interesting, and I know we need to leave time for Q&A, so I don't want to talk too much, so cut me off, but during the pandemic, I think with so many productions shut down in certain cities, we were a good answer to that. So that actually, in some weird way, and it feels funny to say it, but benefited our community and our platform, because we were able to help these brands who just didn't know what to do anymore when their productions were shut down in various cities. But yes, we've definitely seen even more of an uptick this year.
That's great. That's great. Well, yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm sure we probably have some people with questions out there. So let's open that up so they can start to ask those. If I can see, oh, here we go. Anyone out there who wants to?
Yeah, so somebody had just asked about some of the prior episodes of Scope to hear other conversations, because this one is so great, and they all are, and they're important conversations. So I just put a link, but anybody who's looking for it, there's APA, we have a YouTube channel for American photographic artists where we have this episode of Scope that will be appearing, and then all the previous episodes that we have done. It's just, there's an incredible amount of content that's available to hear from professionals in our industry, to hear how people are marketing themselves or getting business or working together, the communities that are there for people. I think it's really, there's a ton of things happening this year. For as difficult a year as it's been, I really think that some amazing projects have come out of this. Some platforms that didn't exist before that are now out there. And I feel like people are really connecting in ways that they hadn't before. And I really appreciate your part of this conversation. But I think that there's definitely, you can find these other groups also. We list a lot of them on the APA national site, and to hear from some of them as well.
That's great. See anyone else out there have any more questions? Quiet, so quiet.
Yes, no questions too small, no questions too big.
That's right. Or embarrassing, or
yeah, we are happy to answer. I do see some are asking the mission process, which we mentioned briefly at the top. And so basically, I'll just say again that, you know, photographers can reach out to me directly at any time. My email for Black women photographers is at blackwomanphotographers.com, and just please include, some background about who you are, link to see your work, and then I would follow up with a form where you can just answer a number of questions, some community-based questions, and get you onboarded that way. It may take me a few weeks to reply just because there are a lot of emails that I get and notifications on all these platforms, and I'm still in the process of building a team. I do not have a team yet, so please be patient with my reply, but I will get back to you, I promise. And then Keren can explain her process.
Sure. For anyone interested in becoming a member of The Loop, just come to theloop.com or loop.com, and you can apply, click on creator, I want to be a Loop photographer, and you can submit a link to your site and let us know that you're interested. We get a notification, review your work, and then we'll get back to you.
Great. Let's see, there's another question about someone's asking that they work in 35mm film photography. Do we know of any communities that specifically are for that?
So old school.
I know, right?
There are a lot of photographers in the Loop who shoot film, and so you're welcome to apply to join the Loop, and depending on the jobs that we get, you can either accept them or not, or just be part of the community.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a film channel in our Slack community, so you are definitely welcome as well.
Perfect.
And if you look up on the APA site under diversity, we list all the different groups that were mentioned here today. A lot of them have been interviewed on various videos that we have, so I can send you a link to that. So I saw somebody was trying to get the list again. Yeah. If you email me, executive.director@apanational.com, I'll send you a list as well if you want to know who the different groups are.
Perfect. And there's one more question here. Interested in learning if LGBTQA members of your communities are very open about their identities, and if clients look to support photographers that identify this way. Do your photographers openly identify, or do some see these identities as additional strikes against them?
Well, thank you, first of all, for your question. A great question amongst it being also Pride Month. But I would hope that, none of the photographers would feel like that's a strike against them for either communities. I mean, just from what I've seen from afar, from being in the Loops community for the short while I've been in there so far, I haven't seen that being an issue. And also in mine, I haven't seen that being an issue yet. Photographers who are open, they may share it in the context of the work that they are doing. Like just now, literally actually on Friday was like the deadline to submit to this collective photo essay we're doing for Pride Month, where photographers who are members of the community submitted their work that will be published soon in an outlet. And again, the work that we do, we try to make sure that it is a safe, inclusive space. And I know you can hear that a lot, and for some it can just be words, but I really do, do everything I can to make sure that it's not just words, not just something you hear, but it actually is. And so for me, I haven't, had that be an issue. Again, but people are welcome to share whatever they care to share. I don't really go and ask unless if it's, for something like this open call submission process that we just did for Pride Month. So it just varies, I guess.
And I would agree with everything that Polly said. In the Loop, we have photographers who identify in many different ways, and we're accepting of all of the photographers and want to make sure that it's an inclusive, safe place for photographers to chat about anything and to feel welcome to be who they are and to celebrate it. So not an issue that we have come across at all in the Loop. I think if anything, it's the opposite. It's people wanting to be themselves and feel welcomed.
Yeah, that's great. And then it looks like there's another link here. The person who was asking about the film, being a film shooter, called analogforevermagazine.com.
Mm-hmm.
Is another good resource to check out. Anything else there?
This is how the community helps each other, right? Ask
Right.
questions and have people that can answer.
That's right. I don't see anybody else.
Well, I want to thank you, each of you again. I really appreciate your taking the time to talk, and to the fact that you each took the initiative to create the groups that you have, where you could have just focused on your own career, I think is extraordinary. So thank you for that. Thank you for being part of a larger community. It's what's going to keep this community alive. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Yeah, thank you, Keren and Polly. It was great meeting you both finally, or
Thanks.
seeing you and meeting you.
Thanks for the great conversation. And thanks for all the questions.
Of course, appreciate the time. And I'm imagining everything's in the notes, like Juliet said, and they can go to the YouTube to see the recording later too. Don't forget.
Yep. And reach out to us if you need anything and want to connect with different people. That's what we're here for, to connect everybody. So.
Yeah.
And if you have any questions about The Luupe, you can email us at hi@theluupe.com, and we'll help however we can. Thank you so much. And follow us on social media, Black Women Photographers, The Luupe.
Nice. Great. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Juliet, for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.